Electronic Entertainment Expo, commonly known as E3, used to happen around this time of the year. It was a pretty major industry trade show where developers and publishers came together to share their big announcements on new hardware, consoles, and of course, new games.
Right on time.
Starting in 1995, unfortunately, in December of 2023, E3 was officially discontinued. Now replaced by internet streaming showcases from individual publishers and Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest. Is this better or worse for the gaming industry as a whole?
I'm about taking names, and we're about making games.
What we have shown you here today is only the beginning.
So to talk about E3 and a little bit more, I've brought in Gus Ronald, who is a gaming journalist and host of Back Pocket. Hello, Gus.
Hello, Mackenzie. Games journalist is probably a stretch, I would say. I used to be a bit more of a games journo when I worked in TV, but now I'm just on the internet like everyone else.
Yes, and you're also a massive gamer.
I am. I am still a massive gamer, and E3 was a big thing in my life for a certain amount of time, but not anymore.
No, it is gone. It is gone. So let's start from the perspective of a gamer witnessing E3. What was, I guess, some of your main memories or standout core memories of E3 watching it as a gamer?
Well, you say watching it, but I'm old enough that I read about it. Oh. So I would read articles in gaming magazines that were basically journos writing up their experience going over to LA and going to this trade show, because it was just that. It was a trade show for journos. And so I would see these pictures in a magazine of this amazing looking event. And I even was young enough to think, I'm going to go to that one day, and then realizing, oh wait, this is not for the public, this is a professional thing. The fairy tale is that I did eventually get to go, but yeah, I do remember seeing that there was spectacle around games and that there was an element of pageantry that I just did not think existed up until that point. It was exciting.
Was there one reveal or trailer or moment from a press conference that stands out as one of your favorites?
I mean, I was always a sucker for anything Nintendo did. And I think for me, the biggest one was Twilight Princess. Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess had a sort of a launch trailer that doesn't actually look much like the game that it turned into, or at least there was a lot of like in development stuff, which we're used to, but it had this epic soundtrack. So there was this roar from the crowd as well. Now I wasn't there, but I was watching a video of all these people fist pumping and screaming as this music swells. And I remember seeing that and thinking, that would be cool. I would love to be in that room and just be there to feel the energy in the space as well. And again, there's been so many others as well, but that one really stuck in my mind.
Why do you think gamers became kind of emotionally attached to this thing that was essentially an industry trade show?
I think it was because of the level of pageantry and the amount of spectacle that got put alongside these games. And E3, even at its early stages, had, it was this huge dark hall full of booths that were all dressed with characters and lighting and music pumping and all that. I think it just felt like this sort of rock and roll event around gaming, which is an entertainment art form. So it's like, it wasn't hard for these things to be really exciting. And I think gamers just are easily excitable, and they just thought this would be like going to a party about my favorite, hobby. And that's kind of what it was for a long amount of time. Yes, it was industry, yes, it was for journos and reporters, but I think it's still like, it had a rock and roll kind of vibe to it, at least from what I saw back in there and from what I got to experience.
I guess gaming is like one of those industries as well, it's not like super duper corporate. Everyone's a bit kind of nerdy. And
totally. Like, there was still a corporate side to it. There was still sort of backroom interviews. That sounds suspicious. There was kind of like proper sit down with developers and tech brands and stuff. But I think at the forefront, they wanted to show it off as best they could. And so there were these cool, just eye-catching elements to it that people would just get lost in and feel like a kid going there, and you'd have these grown-ups running around just feeling like they were at a cool video game party, and that's how I acted when I was there.
Do you think that the gaming industry has kind of lost something now that E3 is gone?
Yeah, totally. I think it was definitely something that existed in its time, and it can't exist anymore. because of the way technology and communication has evolved. What it did is it also drew everyone's attention at one time of the year. And so you'd all kind of be focused in for a week where all the big announcements would happen. And I just think it was nice to feel like we were all tuned into the same bit of information at the same time. That still happens to an extent with the sort of summer showcases and all that, but I feel like it has fractured a bit. And back then it was just such a cool time that everyone would be talking to each other around the water cooler and about like, I can't wait to see this press conference and I'm hoping that this might come out. Yeah, it got us all together.
Camaraderie, community.
Camaraderie, yeah. It was like, gamers stick together when we can, but that was definitely the time that everyone was just like all huddled around one screen, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like couch gaming.
Yeah, I miss it.
Yeah. So we have these more modern, as you said, fragmented showcases now. Like Xbox has got their own one, PlayStation, Summer Games Fest, even like the Game Awards, you could say, is kind of a trailer show. Do you think that it's sort of less exciting to witness things in these live stream formats?
Yeah, I think there's still some of these things like Summer Games Fest they have a live audience along with it, and I think that really helps hearing the crowd get excited, having any form of live audience alongside it. But Nintendo was the one who famously sort of peeled away and started doing the Nintendo Directs, and they were a really concise way that showed off everything they were going to show off in the next year. It had really strong messaging from all their key figures, and it was really tight, and it made a lot of sense when you had all these more sort of looser, messier stage presentations from some of the bigger players. And I think there are pros and cons to both, but I think obviously Nintendo won out both from accessibility, but also just it kept their messaging on brand. And when your messaging is on brand, you lose a bit of the fun, you lose a bit of the chaos, and you lose those memorable moments. And even if you try to inject them back in artificially, they still don't have that same je ne sais quoi of like, oh, that went totally wrong, or oh, that did not hit the way they were planning. Doesn't matter how good your corporate suit is, if they have to trot out on stage and talk to a full theater full of people with this laser light show and have to engage with them, like there's a pressure on them to have a personality that really resonates. We saw people like Phil Spencer from Microsoft had like such a good back and forth with the audience that everyone suddenly became Xbox fanboys and girls because they were like, we really think this person is speaking to us. The second you're doing that in a green screen studio, it just feels corporate. And I think, yes, we still get the games, yes, we still get the trailers, and you also just lose a bit of the fun that can happen when everything goes wrong. And not even goes wrong, it's just when the wheels fall off. It's fun. It makes it feel like a real industry that everyone gets to be shared the collective fun around it rather than it is a business and it is just selling us product.
Yeah. E3 was sort of reserved for journalists and industry people initially. I think they sort of tried to pivot to fans.
It would have been, I think I might get this wrong, but in the last 2 years, so I think like 2017 and 2018, they opened it to the public. And luckily I got a year in there that was just purely journos. And I'm not trying to be non-inclusive about that. It just was a different energy. Everyone was there on a mission. They all wanted to create some content. They all wanted to absorb as much of it as possible so they could relay that to someone else. Once it became open to the public, it did just feel like people were there for a convention. And that's fun in some sense, but it clashed. It totally clashed. We were in there to film, we were in there to do work for it, and it just felt like there were people in there just to waste time. That sounds cynical, but I think it lost something in that. And that was probably the death throes of E3 as it opened to the public. I think they had to do it to survive. I totally understand, but it definitely lost its direction, I think.
I was gonna say it didn't survive.
No, I mean...
They opened the floodgates and it died.
It was a perfect storm. It was that. It was also the online nature of things just meant that it was easier for most people to just watch the press conferences from home. COVID was just knocking on the door too. So I think the whole thing just really hit an unfortunate time, and there was no coming back. There was an attempt to bring it back, but it just couldn't really muster up the same level of enthusiasm and the investment. That was the thing. Companies went, it just is far more economical for us to just do this online and send it out to the world that way. And that's what we have now.
What did it mean when people said that a company had won E3 or was winning E3?
Yeah, that was funny. It was like, there was a period where it was mainly the 3 tentpole companies being Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony. And it essentially meant who garnered the most excitement, hype, who had the best announcement trailers, but who also executed it in the best way. As I mentioned before, you can stumble on stage, and some of those things that gamers might be excited about might flop in the way that it's presented or the confusion. So you could always tell. You'd always finish E3 and be like, definitely was Nintendo this year. And it wasn't just who had the biggest game. It was, I think, collectively who could marry it all together and make you walk away from that press conference going, my allegiance now lies with Sony this year or Microsoft. I know a lot of people stick to their camps, but I think sometimes you could be swayed and think, my God, yeah, I do love that brand more than others. Totally commercialized. I understand I'm being completely manipulated, but I liked being manipulated. That's on camera now.
Do you think that younger gamers are going to really understand why E3 mattered and why it's so sad that it's gone?
Maybe not why we're sad that it's gone, but I would hope that they would look at some of the spectacle that was E3 and think, gosh, I would have liked to have been there. There's something about being there in person. Even though we are playing a digital medium, it's nice to be in this space to share it with other people. I think they would totally understand that. I don't think they would quite understand why we're sad to have missed that, because the accessibility now is insane. Like the fact that we can just stream these things, the minute they go live, we are watching it at the same time as the rest of the world.
So of course you then transition from being a fan of this to actually working as a games journalist at the ABC. You're on television. You got to go to E3 and experience that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your experience there.
It was pretty wild because, as I mentioned, it was something I always wanted to go to. I then realized I couldn't go to it. And then the fairy tale was that I found myself working for Good Game at the ABC, and they would go over and follow E3 every year and do a special episode about it. I didn't get my foot in the door to go to E3 until my last couple of years at Good Game, but I really tried. I kept trying to ask, could I come along and do more content around it? It was wild, first and foremost. I think we should say as Australians as well, going to LA was part of the excitement as well. Going to America, that launched you into the excitement. That was part of it. Leaving with a bunch of other Aussies to head over there and be part of this event was amazing. Once I was there, it was everything I was hoping it would be. It was a huge hall full of crazy noise and excitement and lots of things to do and running around feeling like we had a purpose to be there. We had a lot of information to capture and somehow get back to Australia and bring back for a 1 hour special. So yeah, it was wild. It was a lot of work though. That was the thing. I think we went over there I especially went over there with the pressure to make it worth sending me over there, I guess.
How important was E3 at its peak to games journalism?
At its peak, it was when there was less video content and it was more about writing these articles and having these really hard-hitting interviews with people that you were only getting access to at that time. Before, I think, casual emails and video calls were happening, this was a chance to sit down with some big names in the industry and actually get that exclusive from them. So I think as a gamer who was absorbing all of that stuff, it was super important because there was no other way to get it. I didn't have the internet in the way that we have today. And so at best, I was looking at someone with a camera taking photos of a screen of an N64 prototype before we had the Nintendo 64. And I was drooling over that. I was like, what is this? So again, I think it's important, at least to me, this was the rest of the world. This was the news from around the world being brought back to me through an Australian, often through an Aussie journal or someone over there who was doing the hard work for it. So it was important.
So I guess to that point, how important was getting hands-on access to things on that showroom floor?
Yeah, interesting. I guess I've got a slightly sort of skewed version of that because we were over there to make video content or to make an entertaining show as well. So in terms of the hands-on with the games, we did our best to carve out time to play them, but realistically, we were there to just show the expo and mainly talk to developers. Our opinion of playing that game probably wasn't the priority as much. We could definitely speak to what it felt like to have a quick go, but often, to ruin the magic of television, we realistically just got a moment to play so we could film ourselves playing it and looking engaged and having a quick moment to wow ourselves at the next Batman game. And very quickly, we would be either rushed away by a producer or someone to go to the next interview or to go to the next area. Even if I was like, no, please, I really wanted to play this. I came all this way. And then often, as I said, the information information was more drawn out from the developers or from the people we would talk to over there. And it was wonderful. People were really generous with their time, but we just didn't have enough of it.
Yeah.
So often the hands-on moment was the least priority, which sucked because genuinely, I got 5 minutes with Breath of the Wild before it had come out, like a year before it came out. And I was just wanting to play one of the best games ever. And I was being ushered away by one of my producers, or just because we had to be somewhere else. And I was like, I can't believe it was a 14-hour flight and whatever else. And I barely even got to see the game.
So what, in your opinion, were the best and worst parts about covering E3?
Interesting. The best parts would have been, I think, the press conferences, because they did feel like the pinnacle of the event. You would get sat down in a theater, there would be all this anticipation as everyone was filed in, and then you would get a rock show of a presentation, often from a company showing off everything they could in the best light, and you would walk out of those shaking. Like, it would just be, the excitement around the press conferences was warranted. It was fun, and they all had a different flavor to them. I guess the low light, for us, was the fact that we just barely got any downtime while we were there. There was a bit of pressure on us being flown over there to, as I said, do all this content, and it really meant that you couldn't let your hair down. I did one year try to party hard, and I partied a little too hard on the first night, but it was an experience to see all these people as my peers and new faces, celebrities and all that sort of stuff, and get to enjoy it. The problem was the following few days left me quite fragile and not making the best decisions, whereas I think a lot of the writers for websites and that kind of stuff could hide that behind their articles, and they would get the work done, or they would all just take notes to take home with them, whereas we had to be camera ready the next day. And so that took some of the fun out of it. But we did finish every E3 by going to Disneyland. Yay! So the highlight of E3 was Disneyland. Was Disneyland, I guess. But that was the sort of way to say we did a good job. We all worked really, really hard, and we would just let our hair down on the last day for a bit of fun. So
finally, would you want E3 to come back? Maybe if it's not E3, but something like E3.
Of course, I have a fondness for it and the memory of what it was, and I would love to relive that. But I think we all know that that can't exist in the world we live in today and how things have evolved. So I think the best thing we can do is just look back on that time fondly and just remember what it was and not try to recreate that. The fact that we are now all about showcases, and there is a sort of week or 2 week period that we're seeing all these showcases drop, all these games. It's giving a lot of smaller developers and indie devs a chance to latch on to a whole bunch of showcases that are out there. There's the Frosty Games Fest, which is all Australian games that are done at the same time as the Summer Games Fest. There's Horror Game Fest, there's Cozy Game Fest, there's all that sort of stuff. So I think the breadth of games that are out there and that we can still enjoy over this 1 or 2 week period, the fact that it is still a calendar date, that this is when we do this, I think is born from E3 and from that trade show. So that's a really lovely sort of thing that's carried through. It was what it was, and it was because of that time. And I look back on it fondly, and it was unique, it was special, and it was E3. You can't match it.
Well, thank you, Gus, so much for coming on. It's been great to chat about E3.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Bringing up a lot of
I'm a little
memories.
sad, but I'm also, I'm happy.
Go back and watch old videos for it. You probably weren't missing as much as you think you were.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think.
You've got the nostalgia goggles.
Oh, totally. I'm all rose tinted here. It was probably actually terrible by your comparison. You kids have all the new fun, shiny stuff online.
Yeah. Well, speaking of new and shiny, Summer Games Fest is about to drop, I guess.
Yeah, that's happening.
Is there anything that you're hoping will be announced? Anything you're excited for?
Look, everyone's hoping there'll be a GTA 6 trailer that's going to drop around Summer Games Fest. I don't think that's going to happen. Jeff Keighley doing his whole song and dance is still entertaining to watch, and there are still some clumsy moments in it that I think they force in. There's often some Muppets in there, which I'm really keen to see.
Yeah, the Muppets are always around.
Yeah, no, I've kind of stayed away from that because I just like to be surprised now, and I think if you expect anything, you'll only be disappointed now. So I will go into that blind and hopefully that's it. No expectations. Just enjoy, hopefully, it, and just stay out of the chat. Stay out of the chat.
No chat.
Watch it with your friends on the couch.
Yeah.